Morning, everyone. The theme for March 2021 is Open to Possibilities. The topic for today is With Open Arms. Here's a little quote from my poem, Letting In. Finding that sacred spot, knowing there is just one truth, the only guiding light I needed, accepting, allowing, and then just like that, the miracles start showing. Love goes forth, full and flowing. In comes light in wattage never seen before. Powerful, illuminating, effortless. All I had to do was be a yes. All I had to do was be a yes. Ray Jordan, renowned teacher of the visioning process, once said, "In visioning, we are not trying to make anything happen. We are asking what we must embrace in consciousness in order to become the vision waiting to happen through us." Let us reflect on this affirmation of truth as we say it together. With open arms, I embrace my transformation. And now, let us turn to our spiritual light and our community leader, Reverend Dr. Kathleen Johnson.
Okay. Thank you, Ami. That was beautiful. Yes, a beautiful spring day. I am so grateful. And I just have a short little story to tell you. It's a story about a little girl who was at a playground with her father. And she said, she looked up at the sign that said, "Parents, please keep children under supervision." And so she asked her father, she said, "Have you got supervision?" And he said, "I never thought of the word supervision that way." Supervision. Oh, I love that concept. So you and I, okay, let's just own it. You and I, as individualizations of the one ultimate visionary, have supervision, right? We have supervision. The ability, which means the ability to catch ideas in the mind of spirit, possibilities from that field of infinite possibilities, new possibilities for our lives. We have that. We have supervision. Let's own it. Just repeat after me. I have supervision.
I have supervision.
Right. So this month, we are focusing on the spiritual practice called visioning. And I was just thinking about, in these times where there are so many challenges, and then there's the residuals of the old separation consciousness of us and them that keep showing up, and in very, very violent ways at times with our Asian and Pacific Island communities, with our Black communities and all other people of color and women. It's Women's History Month, and there have been many atrocities committed against women, and actually just rights withheld from women. So what is it that's required to transform all of this? I mean, we are committed to this, this idea of being the presence of love, co-creating heaven on earth, a world that works for all. And what it requires, that's a vision, right? That's an ideal, that's a vision that pulls us forward into being. And so visioning itself, this is what's so interesting, is entering the realm of soul manifestation. It's about manifesting soul qualities, manifesting the divine nature that we are in truth. Visioning is actually attuning to the wholeness of being. It's being willing to be an avenue through which that wholeness expresses itself in form and experience. So visioning is then ultimately about the transformation of consciousness, revealing our divine nature, our oneness with the whole, and meeting our various needs then, those things that we often focus on first, which is what do I want to manifest in my life? It becomes a byproduct of that transformation. It's a very different perspective. Rather than putting the focus first on what are the things that I want to get, we're really looking at, well, if I have this particular need, how is it that I must grow in consciousness? How can I use this challenge as an opportunity to more fully express the divine nature that I am? So true vision then is a gift of God. It's inherent in our nature. And it is ability to see past the limited perception of the conditioned mind, right? Conditioned mind will tell us, oh, only this is possible given the conditions in the world. And what we're doing by visioning is entering the realm of all possibility. All things are possible in God. That's where that phrase comes from. And this requires something called humility. Yes, humility with a capital H, because we must be humble enough to say, I want to let go of this limited perception. It's not serving me. And I am willing to evolve and grow in consciousness in order to be that conduit, that vehicle, that channel, that presence through which this idea of a world that works for all heaven on earth takes place. So the visioning process then naturally helps us to move beyond our false ideas of life, our false ideas of God, our false ideas of who we are, our false ideas of humanity, our false ideas of everything truly about the universe. And as these mistaken ideas are consciously released, and that's what we talked about last week, the releasing process, releasing, letting go of, surrendering those limited ideas of the conditioned mind. As they're released, then it makes room for new ideas to be birthed, new ideas of seeing everyone and everything as emanations of God, as expressions of the one life. And so the innate wholeness, completeness, and perfection of everyone and everything. We have some great teachers over the times who have demonstrated this type of supervision that we're talking about today. And one is Jesus, and Jesus was the embodiment of the divine mind, the embodiment of what was called Christ consciousness. They called him the Christ because he became the Christ. He was so much the embodiment of it, but it's a principle that each and every one of us can embody. And that's what visioning is all about. It's about embodying, embracing first, embodying and becoming that which we wish to see in the world, that divine presence, that presence that is ability to do seeming miracles, but we know are actions of universal law when we offer a higher vision to universal law and when we live it and when we move forward toward it. So seeing someone's spiritual truth then is a supervision. It's a supervision. Seeing our own spiritual truth is a supervision. And Jesus modeled that in his teachings. And one of the most famous stories is the one of the blind man. And it's in the book of Mark, chapter 10 and verse 50 and 52, 50 through 52. It's very short, but it says a lot about the spiritual principle or the spiritual practice of visioning and how it works. And so I want to share that with you again. And it just goes like this. There's a blind man who, Jesus is in town. There's a blind man who is there and he's hearing Jesus's voice. And it says he throws off his robe. He walks up to Jesus, and then Jesus asks him, "What do you wish from me?" And the man said, "My vision. And I went to see again." And Jesus said, "See." He commanded the men, "See." And he said, "Your faith," he didn't say my faith. He said, "Your faith has made you whole." This is a beautiful story, the way that it's told. And remember that the stories in the Bible were told as teaching stories. It didn't mean that Jesus didn't exist. I don't want to dispute that, or that, but the thing is they were told in a way that imparted that to people in generations beyond Jesus. And so this whole story is a great little story about visioning. The visioning process is something that allows us to have direct revelation. So that's the first concept that I want to talk about. Ernest Holmes writes in his statement of what we believe and in terms of our teachings, and this particular sentence, I think, really speaks to it. It says, "We believe in the direct revelation of truth through our intuitive and spiritual nature, and that anyone may be a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God." I'm going to read that again. "We believe in the direct revelation of truth through our intuitive and spiritual nature, and that anyone may be a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God." Well, we know that piece about living in close contact with the indwelling God. That's our spiritual practice, right? Our meditation, our prayer, our visioning. And the idea of direct revelation happens with that connection. And the visioning process helps us to develop our intuitive capacities, because it says the direct revelation through our intuitive and spiritual nature. Visioning helps us to develop our intuitive capacities, our ability to be open to direct revelation. We can call it guidance, we can call it new possibilities, we can call it new solutions, but it's direct revelation. It's something that comes out of the blue in order for us to bring it into manifestation. And it happens through us, right? It happens through us. So intuition, that's the intelligence of the divine in man, or operating through humanity. Intuition then being an avenue or a faculty. It's a spiritual faculty through which divine revelation of truth directly from the mind of the divine takes place. To me, this is a beautiful description of Christ consciousness. It's a unity. It's talking about oneness, and it's about supervision, being able to catch these ideas. And I want to say something about vision, by the way. For many of us, when we do the visioning process, we don't see pictures necessarily, but we get thoughts, or we have feelings. All of those are really part of the visioning process. So I want you to see vision in a bigger, just in a bigger light, that it involves all of the senses. So the man taking off his robe, that was really powerful. Remember the blind man, he took off his robe before he walked up to Jesus. In in metaphysical terms in the Bible, taking off your old robe, all those garments and letting them go is like taking off the old consciousness and letting it go. You have to do that first, right? We did that last week. It's removing all the obstacles in consciousness, releasing all that stuff in order to, and he moved toward Jesus. Jesus is a representative of the divine ideal. He was pulled by the vision of new infinite possibilities. And we do that when we turn within and we ask a question, what is the highest idea of? And we listen. And Jesus, divine mind, said to him, what do you wish? And so he came with this deep intention to be healed of his blindness. And so he said, I want to see, I want my vision, right? And vision, we know, is a spiritual faculty. It functions without the physical eyes, because we close our eyes when we catch a higher vision. And in addition to that, with those who've experienced the near-death experience of having left the body on the operating table or whatever, when someone leaves the body, they don't have physical eyes. They're going down the hallway, they're seeing things, they're hearing things. Those are spiritual faculties. That was like an aha moment when I read about those experiences of people who had died momentarily, but then came back to their bodies to report all the things that had happened to them. Vision is a spiritual faculty. It's not dependent upon physical eyes. And yet our physical eyes are a human expression of that. So the blind man threw off his robe and he went toward Jesus, the divine mind representation of Christ consciousness, caught a higher vision, a new possibility, decided to embrace it with his faith. And then what did it say? He walked away. He became one with his vision and he went on with his life. So in the manifestor stage of consciousness, we learn to use the creative process. And so we have these 4 stages of growth. We have the victim consciousness, which is life is happening to me. We have the manifestor stage where we learn how to use spiritual law, and we call that the manifestor stage. What can happen though in the manifestor stage is we think that it's all about acquiring, and we might miss the point that it's really all about becoming. And so that stage is fine. It really helps us to get our life in a stable form in terms of health and finances and all of those other things. So we embrace a new thought, a new mental equivalent, plant it in creative medium, pull out the weeds of doubt in our consciousness, and water it with attention and faith until it manifests as a changed condition. Well, in visioning, we move from manifestor, and actually we encompass manifestor because there's still manifestation that takes place. We move into this thing called mystic or master consciousness. Mystic consciousness and master consciousness is the embodiment of cosmic Christ consciousness, but mystic is one step closer, being a channel. So visioning uses the creative process to embrace a new way of being. It's about soul manifestation. So we become avenues through which spirit manifests as new form and lived experience. It's a different perspective. So last week we prepared ourselves in consciousness by saying, what is God's highest idea of what I must release to remove the obstacles and clear the avenue for the vision. Today we add to that, what is Spirit's idea of what I am to embrace, embody, and become in order to align with the vision. So let's look at those 3 words: embrace, embody, become. Embrace is simply, this is, to me, this is open arms. This is what our talk is about today, right? It's welcoming. It's having open arms, opening ourselves up to who we are in truth, because embracing is about embracing our own divinity. And often it's a certain quality for the moment that we're focused on bringing forth. Remember, it's with us in essence, but it's important that we bring it forth into expression. So it's an open arms open to a new way of being. The blind man opened his arms to a new way of being after he took off the robe and walked toward Jesus and asked. Embody, the word embody. When we embody something, we assimilate it into our consciousness, into our subconscious mind. And then it becomes a natural way of being. We don't have to think about it too much anymore, you know? We just sort of show up that way. The blind man embodied the quality of vision through his faith. And he was able to just walk away and get on with his life, regained his sight. Becoming is allowing that which you already are to be fully expressed. When we ask, what is in the vision, what must I become in order to live the vision? We're asking, what divine qualities within me am I called to not only remember, but act upon? It's about action. It's becoming, there's an action to it. So first we embrace, then we embody, which is be, and then we become. And the vision all the while is pulling us forward into that greater expression of who we are. You're beginning to get the picture of how this works. So I'm turning now to another story. And this is the story of Jesus walking on water and calling Peter to come toward him and do the same. And in the story, Jesus, of course, again, represents the divine ideal, the walking on water, the living in the field of all possibilities, things that seem to the human mind to be impossible. And so he begins calling Peter. It's like the vision calling and pulling Peter into expression of this higher nature of his being. And, whether it actually happened or not is not the point. We're in the Bible, we're not into looking for the facts. We're into looking for what is the teaching in this. And so Peter then began to walk on water as he was going toward the vision. So let me just, I'm feeling like a need to summarize all of this and just be sure that we all leave with this very clear. Embrace, embody, become. Let's summarize those. Jesus as the living Christ, the embodiment of Christ, embraced and embodied Christ consciousness through very extensive spiritual practice. He would go into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights at a time, and there were very extensive practice over a period of time. He became the embodiment of that Christ consciousness. And then he embraced it, he wanted it, he embodied it. And then he became the master teacher that took his teaching out into the world and touched the people of his time with seemingly miraculous healings and spiritual teachings that were in parables that people, that helped people to get it on a deeper level. And even to this day, we're talking about Jesus, his teachings, he embraced, embodied, and became his teachings so fully that even today, people are using his teachings as a guidepost of what spiritual principle is and how it works in our lives in a really practical manner. So what I would like to do now is let's put this into practice. So get out some paper and pencil, everybody. And let's just use our supervision in this moment. Use that gift of the divine that we have within us. And I invite you to find a comfortable position and drop into your hearts and breathe. Breathe slowly and deeply. And if I were with you and we had more time, I would take you through this beginning part in a longer method, for a little bit longer period of time. But I'd like you right now to just do your best to drop into a state of silence. And then ask the divine presence within you. Just as the blind men asked Jesus, ask that divine presence within you. What must I embrace, embody, and become in order to be who I came here to be? What must I embrace, embody, and become to be who I came here to be? And when you're ready, go ahead and begin to journal. Michelle, you put that in the box. Michelle put the question in the chat box. What must I embrace, embody, become in order to be who I came here to be? So let's take another breath. And then I'd like you to state to yourself that you already are that. I am, and you, whatever quality or qualities came up for you, let's claim it right now. Beautiful. And so it is. So Michael Beckwith says, we pray affirmatively, not about how to accomplish the vision, but rather about the ways in which we need to grow. What qualities do we need to embody? That's what we just did. That's our prayer work. That's where our prayer work is in what we must remove in consciousness, release, and what it is that we must bring forth out of our divine nature into expression. And when we do that, then we become the avenues through which all of the goodness, whether it's health, financial well-being, career, relationship, through which all of that happens in a more organic and beautiful way. So, my friends, I leave you with this. What are you willing to welcome with open arms today? Because the possibilities are infinite. All right, my friends, happy spring, namaste, and so it is.
So it is.